Hey, lovely people. It's Olivia, and I'm so happy to be back with you as your resident HBC midwife. Today, I'd like to discuss with you fetal presentation because I hear about it so much from my patients. They're always so worried about which way their baby's facing, even when it's way too early to be discussing that or being worried about it. So I thought today we could talk about it in very basic terms so I can help put your minds at ease. What is fetal presentation? Perhaps you've heard it called fetal position, fetal lie. It's a lot of different terms and it's always a lot of information, but basically, they are three different things, and they're just a way for us to understand how our babies or fetuses are laying or hanging out in our uteruses or in our bodies. So it's a way for us to understand and connect with what's going on inside of us. So let's break it down by discussing fetal presentation. Fetal presentation talks about which part of your baby or fetus is headed into the pelvis first or pointing toward your pelvis. That could be the head. If it's the head, you hear it called cephalic position or vertex position. If it's the butt or the feet, you call it breech presentation. Sorry, you hear me even interchangeably using the term. So we're talking about presentation. So if the butt or the feet are going first, you call that breech, but there are actually four different kinds of breech. If the shoulder is leading the way, then that would be called a shoulder presentation. So again, presentation has to do with which part of your baby or fetus is heading into the pelvis, leading the way into the pelvis first. If we talk about fetal lie is talking about your baby's spine in relationship to your spine. So if mom's spine is up and down, right? Like I'm sitting up like this is an up and down spine, right? If my baby's spine is also in the direction of up and down, that's called a longitudinal lie. If the baby's spine is going this way, meaning your baby is laying across, right? This is your spine, this is your baby's spine, and your baby's laying across, that's called a transverse lie. If your baby's hanging out in this cute, like diagonal position, this is called an oblique lie, meaning baby's kind of chilling diagonally. Notice that with lie, we don't talk about what's up or down first, head or feet or butt. It's just talking about spine to spine. Why do we even worry about this? Why is it important? It's important because fetal lie and presentation can affect your birth plan and your options for birth. If your baby's shoulder is leading the way, right? Shoulder presentation, like we talked about, a baby that's leading the way shoulder-wise will not come out of the pelvis or the vagina. So there, a doctor will either need to turn your baby before labor if possible, or you have a cesarean section. A baby whose butt or legs are going first may actually be able to come out vaginally. We call that breech birth if you are working with a doctor or a midwife who is skilled in vaginal breech birth. Unfortunately, since about 2006, when a study called the term breech trial came out, it said that babies who were born via vaginal breech birth had a higher chance of death. In the United States, we pretty much stopped performing that, and medical schools stopped teaching it to doctors coming out, and it was taken away from the midwife scope of practice. Since about 2006, since a study called the term breech trial came out, it said that effectively babies who were born vaginally and they were breeched had a higher risk of death than babies who were born either via cesarean section. So it pretty much disappeared in the United States. Doctors stopped being taught how to do it. It was taken away from the midwife scope of practice, and therefore vaginal breech birth pretty much disappeared in the United States with some exceptions. Years later, the validity of the study started being questioned when they found out that the researchers themselves who made the study did not follow their own requirements for letting people come into the study, which affects your findings. And also, they realized that the doctors who were participating in the study perhaps had a questionable level of expertise in supporting vaginal breech birth, which there would affect the findings of your study. Nevertheless, the harm was already done, shall we say, and it's been really a struggle, especially here in the United States, for breech vaginal birth to come back and be considered just a variation of normal. Babies are either head up or head down, or butt up or butt down. 3 to 4% of all pregnancies are breeched, which is a lot of babies and a lot of moms. Currently in the United States, some countries in Latin America, South Africa, Europe, and Asia, the only option for a woman who is carrying a baby in breech position is to have a planned cesarean section. But if you are determined, at least here in the US, you can find a doctor who offers breech birth still, and even some midwives, but you have to meet very specific criteria that is very specific to your body and your baby. So how do you know what position your baby is in? And when should you really start to worry about it? There's some cool techniques called Leopold's maneuvers, and some doctors and a lot of midwives use this to be able to tell abdominally. They touch you abdominally, put certain pressure to feel the body parts of your baby so that they can tell you which way your baby is lying and the fetal presentation. Those of us that are skilled at this can even really guess is not like the scientific word, but approximate the weight of your baby inside of your belly. This is usually started in the third trimester, but I would really like to say around 30 weeks and up. The reason is at that time, your baby is roughly the size, and this is on average, okay, and everybody's different, but roughly the size of a winter squash, or like we like to say in the US, a pumpkin. Before then, it's hard to accurately assess abdominally with our hands fetal lie and presentation, mainly because your baby is still quite small. If you think about it, at 12 weeks, roughly on average, your baby is the size of like a kiwi. At 20 weeks, which is 5 months, your baby is the size of a cantaloupe. So it's really closer to going into the going into the 7th, 8th month that we can start to really feel. So you have a lot of time. With ultrasound technology, we can see fetal lie and presentation and position all the time. But I want you to remember that ultrasounds are only effective in that moment in time. They're a snapshot in time. Their findings are not permanent when it comes to fetal lie and presentation because our babies are always moving. This is why routine prenatal care is amazing and really, really good for you because we can assess trends over time. So please, ladies, don't come to me at 13 weeks telling me you had your first ultrasound and you're so worried because your baby's not head down or breeched. It really doesn't matter at that time. Babies do jumping jacks, flips, gymnastics, all in our body. And I don't want you to be stressed about something that at that point in time isn't important because it's going to change so much throughout your pregnancy. If you're somebody who likes to be really proactive in your pregnancy, a really fun technique is called